Try to remember your dream from 3 nights ago. You can't. You probably can't even remember last night's, and you had it 8 hours ago. Every single night, your brain generates a full, immersive experience, and then deletes almost all of it before you're even out of bed. Why would evolution build something this expensive just to throw it away? You'll spend roughly a third of your life asleep. And for close to a quarter of that time, your brain isn't resting. It's rendering entire worlds. People who don't exist. Places pulled from memories you didn't know you still had. Conversations with no script, no author, no one at the wheel except something inside your own skull. And then, almost all of it disappears. No species on Earth does anything remotely like this, and after more than a century of serious study, nobody can fully explain why we do it either. So let's start with what's actually happening in there. Sleep isn't one state, it's several, cycling through stages roughly every 90 minutes. Deep sleep, light sleep, and a stage called REM, rapid eye movement, where most vivid dreaming happens. In 1952, a graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky was monitoring sleeping volunteers when he noticed something strange on the equipment. Their eyes were darting back and forth rapidly beneath closed lids, like they were watching something play out in front of them. He woke a subject mid-episode and asked what was happening. The person had been dreaming, in vivid detail, the entire time. That discovery cracked open modern sleep science, and it also cracked open a question researchers still haven't closed. During REM sleep, your brain is almost as electrically active as it is while you're awake. Blood flow increases to the visual cortex, the emotional centers, the regions that handle memory. Meanwhile, your body goes almost completely paralyzed, a state called atonia, so you don't physically act out what you're experiencing. Your brain builds a world detailed enough to fool you completely, while your muscles are locked down so you can't move through it. Think about that for a second. That's not a small thing to evolve. That's an enormous amount of biological machinery dedicated to something you won't even remember by lunchtime. Here's a strange twist most people never hear about. You're not the only animal doing this. Researchers studying rats found that during sleep, the same neurons that fired while a rat ran a maze during the day fired again, in the exact same sequence, hours later while the rat slept. The rat wasn't just resting. Its brain was replaying the maze step by step, like watching game film. Cats show REM sleep. Dogs twitch their paws mid-dream, and if you disable the paralysis mechanism in a sleeping cat's brain, a real experiment scientists actually ran, the cat gets up and starts stalking things that aren't there. Whatever dreaming is for, it's not unique to us. It runs deep in the mammalian brain, which means it's old. Older than language. Older than fire. Possibly older than anything we'd recognize as human at all. For most of the 20th century, the leading explanation came from Sigmund Freud, who argued dreams were a window into repressed desires, your unconscious mind smuggling out forbidden thoughts disguised as symbols. It was influential, it shaped an entire century of pop psychology, and it's almost entirely unsupported by actual neuroscience. Modern researchers largely reject it, not because it's an unflattering idea, but because it doesn't hold up against what brain scans actually show. So if it's not your subconscious confessing secrets, what is it? One of the strongest competing theories came from Harvard psychiatrists J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley in 1977. Their activation synthesis theory argued something almost anticlimactic. Dreams aren't meaningful messages at all. During REM sleep, a part of your brainstem fires off essentially random electrical signals. Your cortex, the part responsible for higher thought, receives that chaotic noise and does what it always does, it tries to make sense of it. It stitches the random signals into a story, because a brain that's built to find patterns cannot simply sit there and look at noise. Under this theory, a dream isn't a message from your subconscious. It's your brain narrating static. But that theory has a problem too. It doesn't explain why dreams so often reflect exactly what's going on in your actual life, why you dream about the exam you're anxious about, or the person you had an argument with. Random noise shouldn't organize itself around your specific emotional situation quite that consistently. That gap led to a different theory, one focused less on the content of dreams and more on what they might be for. Finnish researcher Antti Raivancho proposed something called threat simulation theory. His idea, dreaming, evolved as a kind of practice space. Across cultures and across history, a huge percentage of dreams involve being chased, falling, fighting, or narrowly escaping danger. Raivancho argued this wasn't a coincidence, it was training. Your ancestors who mentally rehearsed escaping predators at night, even in a low-stakes simulated environment, may have reacted faster and survived more often when a real threat showed up in daylight. Under this theory, your brain isn't wasting energy on dreams. It's running a nightly emergency drill you never signed up for and never remember afterward. Nowhere does this theory show its teeth more than in nightmares tied to real trauma. Survivors of car accidents, combat, and violence frequently report a specific, recurring nightmare that replays the event, sometimes for years afterward, sometimes with disturbing accuracy. For a long time, this was seen as the mind torturing itself for no reason. But some researchers now read it differently, an overtuned threat simulation system, one that got calibrated by a genuinely life-threatening event and now runs that simulation on a loop, trying to prepare you for a danger that, statistically, already happened and is unlikely to happen again in the same form. The system doesn't know the drill already failed to prevent anything. It just knows the stakes were the highest it's ever recorded, so it keeps rehearsing. Other researchers point to a completely different function, one focused not on danger but on memory. Studies out of Harvard and MIT have found that people who dream about a task they just learned, a maze, a musical pattern, a new skill, often perform significantly better on that task the next day than people who slept without dreaming about it. The theory here is that REM sleep helps your brain sort through the day's information, deciding what gets filed away as long-term memory and what gets discarded as noise. Your dreams, under this view, might be the visible side effect of your brain literally reorganizing itself while you're unconscious, moving files, strengthening some connections, pruning away others. And there's a newer, stranger theory gaining traction, one that flips the entire question upside down. Neuroscientist Erik Hoel proposed that dreams might exist specifically to prevent your brain from overfitting to reality. In machine learning, an algorithm trained only on repetitive, narrow data gets brittle. It performs great on familiar situations and falls apart the moment something unexpected happens. Hoel's hypothesis is that your brain runs into the same risk. If you only ever process the predictable patterns of everyday life, awake reality, your neural networks would become rigid. Dreams, under this theory, deliberately inject weirdness, distorted logic, impossible physics, faces that shift into other faces, specifically to keep your brain flexible enough to handle situations it's never seen before. Here's what's wild about that. It means the sheer randomness of dreams, the part that seems the most useless, might actually be the entire point. There's one more piece of this that deserves a mention: lucid dreaming, the rare state where you become aware you're dreaming while it's still happening, and can sometimes even control it. Researchers using EEG scans have confirmed it's real. There's a measurable spike in activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-awareness and decision-making, a region that's normally almost silent during ordinary dreaming. For a few minutes, the part of you that watches and the part of you that dreams overlap. Some researchers see this as a clue that dreaming and waking consciousness aren't as separate as they feel, just two settings on the same underlying machine, and lucid dreaming is what happens when the dial slips. So which theory is correct? Honestly, probably pieces of all of them. Threat simulation might explain why so many dreams involve danger, and why trauma rewires the patterns so precisely. Memory consolidation might explain why dreams often replay fragments of your day. Hoel's theory might explain why dreams get so bizarre instead of just replaying memories cleanly. And activation synthesis might explain the raw mechanical starting point underneath all of it: your cortex, handed strange signals, doing what it always does, building a story out of whatever it's given. What almost none of the theories agree on is Freud's original claim, that dreams are secret messages waiting to be decoded. The modern picture looks less like a hidden confession and more like maintenance. Your brain, alone at night with no new input from the outside world, using the downtime to rehearse, reorganize, and stress test itself. And there's something almost unsettling in that. Every night, without asking permission, your brain builds an entire reality, populates it with people, drops you inside it with no memory of how you got there, and lets you believe every second of it is real. Then, within minutes of waking, it deletes almost the entire thing, keeping maybe a fragment, a feeling, an image you can't quite place for the rest of the day. You will do this again tonight. You'll do it tomorrow night, and the night after that for the rest of your life, thousands of times, building worlds you'll never remember building. Somewhere behind your eyes right now, whatever tonight's dream is going to be is already being assembled from pieces of a life you're living without noticing. You still won't remember it tomorrow. But your brain will have used it anyway.